In a horror video game called Stay Alive, a character is exploring a very creepy mansion. He sees shadows moving in mirrors and a woman in red inside a doll cabinet, which moves after he walks away. This is the Blood Countess, who suddenly appears in the corridor and comes after the character. He immediately runs away, but the door closes on its own as creepy spirits begin appearing all over the place. The character runs upstairs and finds a room full of bodies, only for the Blood Countess to push him off the staircase, causing him to get killed by the chandelier chain. In real life, the player Loomis gets the game over screen, not noticing the creepy face appearing behind him. Then he calls his best friend Hutch to invite him to play the game together over the weekend. Afterward, Loomis hears a noise upstairs and carefully approaches a door, only to find his roommate getting busy with a girl. Loomis still stays a moment to tease them for losing because he saw their characters dead in the game. When he goes to sleep, he has a nightmare about the game, and he wakes up to discover power has gone out. He decides to go downstairs and is suddenly startled by a spook on the mirror. He also hears a noise nearby. Loomis blames it on his imagination and keeps going to grab a drink in the kitchen, not noticing the shadow in the corner. Suddenly he hears the noise again and the shadow comes closer, so Loomis throws his glass at it and breaks the mirror before running upstairs in fear. He goes to his friend's room for help only to receive a huge shock. Both the roommate and the girl were killed just like in the video game. Suddenly the strange shadow throws a chain around his neck before throwing him off the handrail, making him die like in the video game too. The next day at work, Hutch is discussing video games with his boss Miller when he gets a call informing him of Loomis' death. Sometime later, he goes to the funeral and meets Abigail, who is taking pictures of all the sad faces. Suddenly Hutch is approached by Loomis' sister, who gives him Loomis' bag as a keepsake. Afterward, Hutch goes to an internet cafe owned by his friend October and her brother Phineas, who are also gamers. They look into Loomis' bag and find some old pictures plus a lighter, which startles Hutch because he has fire-related trauma. They also find a copy of Stay Alive, which October doesn't recognize, so Hutch explains Loomis had been involved in the beta testing. Later at home, Hutch worries when he hears a noise by the door, but it turns out to be his friend Swink, who has come to play Stay Alive. Soon October, Phineas, and Abigail also arrive, while Miller will be playing online from his office. When the game starts, it gets stuck on the image of a book, and the players must recite the Prayer of Elizabeth on their microphones to continue. The words disappear as they read the poem together, and none of them notice the shadow that appears behind them in the room. While they create their characters, the narrator tells them about the story, and October thinks it sounds familiar. As the game starts, the joysticks vibrate to match the shaking in the game. A ghost immediately attacks them and they easily kill it, which makes a rose appear. The narrator explains that roses give them a chance to escape ghosts they can't face. After the slow start, the characters reach a cemetery and start killing ghosts all over the place, which turns out to be lots of fun for the friends. Eventually the group enters a building, where they find a portrait of the Blood Countess when she was still alive as Elizabeth. While Hutch notices all the mirrors in the game are broken, Miller explores the basement, where the door slams shut and separates him from the other players. He finds a room filled with blood, bodies, and ghosts, so he throws a rose to dispel those spirits. Now he's out of roses, which allows the Blood Countess to jump on the character and kill him, giving Miller the game over screen. At that moment, Miller notices someone moving nearby but thinks it's just the night guard. The group decides to call it a night and Miller leaves his office, only to hear his door opening on its own. Thinking it may be the guard, Miller jumps in screaming as a prank but finds nobody and leaves. A shadow begins appearing in the corridors and Miller hears his door open again. At the same time another weird sound echoes in the room. Miller looks under his desk to find his vibrating joystick, only for a ghost to suddenly appear and kill him. The next morning, Hutch comes to work to find his co-workers crying and the police looking over the crime scene. Devastated by the news, he tries to enter Miller's office, but the cops keep him away. Detective Thibodeau asks him a few questions, and Hutch tells him about their shared gaming session. After the detective lets him go, Hutch glances at the office and sees the body on the desk. Sometime later, the friends find the body of Miller's character in the game, and Hutch notices it looks exactly the same as Miller's real death. Most of the group is too disturbed and agrees not to play again, so Phineas decides to play alone. He finds a mirror in the game, which immediately breaks when he sees the reflection of a carriage. However, he turns it around and the other side doesn't break because it's made of silver, so he notices how the carriage approaches his character and pauses the game to save him. Meanwhile, the group discusses what happened, and Hutch points out that Loomis and Miller both played Stay Alive right before they died, so it can't be a coincidence. Worried, the group rushes to check on Phineas and finds him bent over the desk, but he's just smoking. Phineas thinks the theory is dumb and they're overreacting, so after he shows off his mirror item, the group decides to go back to their things for now. While Swink works on his computer, he suddenly sees blood coming out of his keyboard and CPU, accidentally touching it. At the same time, October sees a ghost in the mirror and Hutch sees his eyes change before his mirror breaks. However, all those things go away when they blink. Phineas is working on his car and hears horses nearby, so he moves out of the way, dodging a passing vehicle just in time. Afterward, Hutch researches his friends' deaths in the office computer and notices how even the smallest details match the video game. The girl's body was drained of blood, and Miller was killed by huge twin blades. He's so concentrated on reading that he doesn't notice the ghost wandering through the corridors. The next day, Hutch meets with October, Swink, and Abigail to tell them what he's discovered. October reveals she's done research as well and learned that the Blood Countess is based on Countess Elizabeth Báthory, a real-life crazy murderess. All the buildings in the game are based on her real home, including the torture chamber. She used to hunt for victims in a black carriage and tortured them with huge twin blades. She also hated mirrors because she didn't like seeing herself grow old. As punishment, she was locked up in her tower alive, and that day she swore she would be back for revenge. In the meantime, Phineas is driving to meet the others. Suddenly the sky starts getting dark and a ghost appears in front of the car, causing him to drive off the road. Phineas leaves his car and calls his friends, who remind him he didn't die in the game so he should be fine. However, he starts hearing the horses again and soon the carriage appears to run him over and kill him. When the friends find him, October has a breakdown over her brother while the others check the game to discover Phineas' character has died the same way. The cops soon arrive too and Hutch tells them his theory, but Thibodeau thinks it's ridiculous and suspects Hutch because he's connected to all the victims. While they chat, Officer King decides to try out the game on the boy's computer and his character ends up getting killed in a special trap. Afterward, the group agrees nobody else should get hurt so they need to find a way to stop the game. Moments later, King tries to find Stay Alive at a video game store, but the clerk has never heard of it. When he returns to his car, his mirror breaks as the ghost appears and King is killed the same way his character did in the game. Meanwhile, Hutch and Abigail break into Loomis' house to search for clues, and Hutch shares why he hates fire. When he was a boy, his jealous father thought his mom was cheating and he set their house on fire. Unable to move, Hutch had to watch his mother burn alive. Once inside, they see the room still filled with blood and try to ignore it. Then they find Loomis' cell phone with the name and address of the company that made the game, so they call Swink and October to tell them they'll visit the developer. October uses the chance to tell them she did research and that the only way to destroy the Countess is to drive 3 nails into her body to trap her soul back in her old body, then her blood must be burned. At that moment King's death appears on the news and the cops surround the apartment, but October and Swink manage to get away through the fire escape just in time. Later the friends reunite at Loomis' house and realize that the poem from the beginning of the game summoned the Countess ghost. Suddenly they see the game is running on the computer although nobody turned it on, and it shows a ghost watching October's character through the window. The real October is outside smoking when she suddenly sees a ghost inside a neighboring house under construction. While her friends start looking for her, October enters the house and finds a creepy chain on the floor. The ghost is moving in the shadows, so October grabs a nail gun and tries to shoot the Countess, but unfortunately the nails go right through her. Terrified, she tries to run away but the chain wraps around her ankle and drags her up to hang her upside down. Her screaming gets the attention of her team, who tries to get inside and finds all entrances sealed. The Countess quickly kills October before disappearing, and the door opens for the trio to find their dead friend. After taking a moment to grieve, the trio gets away in Abigail's van before the police can find them. They conclude that the game has been playing itself, so Swink volunteers to continue playing to keep their characters alive. When they finally arrive at the company's address, they discover this is the Countess' original home. Swink stays in the van playing while Abigail and Hutch go to investigate. Nobody answers their knocking, so the duo just goes inside and splits to look around. Abigail finds a doll that looks exactly like the Countess and a room that looks just like the game while Hutch sees the black carriage in the garage. At that moment Swink also realizes the house in the game has the same layout, so he calls Hutch to give him directions. Eventually he finds the cemetery and the tower from the game at the same time Abigail opens the wardrobe to find the same passage she discovered while playing. Here she finds all kinds of spooky items, like broken dolls, creepy crawlers, notes on torture and dark rituals, the Countess portrait, and even her twin blades. There's also a diary with the names of all the girls the Countess killed to stay young. Suddenly the power goes out and the bugs fall on Abigail's face before a ghost appears, making her scream. Hutch hears her and wants to help, so Swink guides him back to a locked door and by dropping a crowbar in the game, he makes one appear in reality and Hutch uses it to break the lock. Then he runs to the room and finds it locked too, but Swink opens it with a key item in the game. As Abigail is grabbed by the ghost's hands and the Countess gets her blades ready, Swink's character gets there first, so he throws roses to make all the spirits disappear. Hutch soon arrives too and comforts a panicking Abigail with a kiss. Afterward the van starts vibrating with the joystick and the doors suddenly close, so Swink can't access the computer anymore. The carriage in the game tries to kill the character, but Swink breaks a window and moves him away just in time. Swink gets back into the van but although his character is still alive, the Countess shows up anyway. Terrified, Swink starts running away toward the roses and gets stuck in a bush, giving the carriage the chance to catch up to him. Soon the Countess comes out and gets her blades ready. Back to Hutch and Abigail, they return to the van to find the laptop screen marked game over and Swink's character dead in a bush. Determined to finish their mission, they gather some nails and roses before the carriage shows up to chase them through the cemetery. Hutch pushes Abigail into a mausoleum to protect her, then he lets the carriage reach him to use a rose and make it disappear, which destroys the flower. Afterward, the duo finds a secret passage in the mausoleum and they start crossing it to reach the tower. Soon the Countess tries to attack them, but Abigail quickly throws a rose at her to make her disappear. Then the ghosts of the girls the Countess killed start filling up the corridor, so the duo runs away and drops more roses before hiding in the Countess' torture chamber. Hutch finds the staircase and barely takes a few steps before the door slams behind him, separating him from Abigail. She urges him to find the Countess' body to put an end to this while she stays protected by their last rose. By climbing the stairs, Hutch reaches the top of the tower and finds the completely preserved body of Countess Elizabeth. While he starts hammering the 3 nails, Abigail plays He Loves Me Not with the rose, and the room suddenly gets dark before she appears hanging from the ceiling. As the Countess appears to taste her blood, Hutch hammers down the last nail, so the spirit leaves Abigail and re-enters the old body. The tower shakes and drops a few things, including an oil lamp that breaks. At that moment the Countess leaves the bed and Hutch hears the nails drop to the floor as she expels them. Remembering Phineas' mirror, Hutch uses his silver laptop to make the Countess see her own reflection, which causes her unbearable pain. Then he forces himself to overcome his fear of fire and lights up the oil from the lamp. As the flames reach the Countess to finish the ritual, Hutch tries to leave, but the door is sealed. He remembers his childhood and thinks he'll end up like his mother, but luckily Swink shows up and kicks the door open. He and Abigail have brought more roses to keep the Countess at bay, and they rescue Hutch before running away. The Countess' body burns down, and as the trio walks away from the tower, the smoke can be seen in the distance. Sometime later, the official release of Stay Alive reaches the video game stores. Even magazines write articles about it and a clerk decides to play it on the store's console. New players recite the summoning poem and the Countess can be seen at the tower window. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.